Hello, everybody, and welcome to another excellent edition of the Caregiver's Toolbox, where I am joined with a lot of important people, and this will be the best podcast we have done thus far. And I am joined here with a lot of members of the National Aging in Place Council. It is not only about Massachusetts this time, but our national group. I'm here with Courtney, Vicky, Ronnie, and Tara to talk about a book that we all participated in and wrote, which is called The Aging in Place Conversations, What Industry Experts Have to Say. Go buy this book, stop everything, pause it, go in the show notes, go down onto YouTube, click the link, buy it. It's not expensive, and it's got a ton of great information. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate you being here. Courtney, Vicky, Ronnie, and Tara, thank you all so very much.
Thank you. I think it's our pleasure.
Absolutely. So what we're going to be doing with this podcast is kind of just going around and introducing ourselves and then talking a little bit about what our section in the book was about and why it was important to us. And then, of course, why being part of this book was important to us and the NAIPC's importance in our communities and in our professional lives. So we'll start with introductions. Courtney, how about you introduce yourself, what you do, where in the country you're from, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. I'm Courtney Nolte. I am the founder of Generational Support, LLC. I'm a blogger and caregiver consultant, and I am based in New Orleans, but I help people all over the country and even a little bit in Canada. What I do as a caregiver consultant is I assist with figuring out all the nuances of aging, specifically with older adult children that are helping their parents navigate it all. So I help with housing, financing, legal, medical, transportation, you name it. I help them out with it. So that is what I do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Vicky, a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a retired physical therapist, was New Yorker for many years and am now retired in the foothills of North Carolina. And even though I'm retired from hands-on physical therapy, I'm still very involved promoting a mind-body system that I created to help people with their physical and mental status. It's called the ABCs of mind, body, fitness, and well-being. And it teaches people how and why to integrate alignment, breathing, and centering into their everyday activities. And of course, that's hopefully very effective for all of us that are hoping and planning to age in place. So my focus is on maintaining the physical skills, especially that we would need. My company is TheraFitness Inc. By the way, there's a website, therafitness.com, and I can be reached at vicky@therafitness.com.
Awesome. And for those that are watching us, some of us have our email addresses as our names on Zoom, so you can get in touch with us that way. Ronnie, what's going on? Let us know about yourself and your business.
I'm Ronnie Genster. I'm a widow, and I own a business called Bereavement Navigators. I was widowed unexpectedly almost exactly 11 years ago at this time. My husband was 61 years old. He had a massive heart attack, 2 operations, and 9 days later, when they told me there was no more they could do, I made the decision to take him off life support, something I don't wish anybody to have to do emotionally. As a result of that, sometime later, after things sort of settled down, and when I say settled down, I didn't have any friends who had been widowed or had been widows or widowers. So I kind of had to figure this all out myself. But after that, when my friends saw kind of what I had needed to do, they really encouraged me to sort of make it, quote, a business, sort of a little different, but from actually what I did. So I have a business called Bereavement Navigators, where I work with widows, widowers, and adult children after the death of a loved one on all the personal and practical tasks. So I don't do bereavement support. That might be a task to refer this out to a bereavement counselor that they might incur after the death of a loved one. So that was the first, I was a marketeer. So that's what I call the first major service offering. And then later people would come to me and say, if what happened to you ever happened to me, I would be in trouble. So can you help me figure out how to sort of plan, which is what we want to do in aging, when we age in place, is do a lot of planning so that have some resources, etc. So there's a second part of the business that I call, in parenthesis, long before a death, meaning while we're healthy, to help people put together the information that they're going to need, and not have to go scrambling to say, where's the passwords, or who do I call, or who do I contact, or what are the steps, and things like that. So they put that all together so that the ones that they leave behind, and not also, and I also want to interject that I now also say whether the person, let's say it's a spouse or a partner, is either permanently, temporarily, or permanently incapacitated, and they did some of the things that are needed within that relationship. So maybe they handled the finances, or maybe they, did other kinds of things. So that we put together sort of documentation so that regardless of who either becomes permanently or temporarily incapacitated or dies, the other person or family member could take over.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And we have Tara Ballman. How are you, Tara?
I am good. It's always fun to be on a podcast with you, Ryan. And
so what do you do, and what's your background? Why are you on this thing at all? What's going on?
What am I doing here? So I am Tara Ballman, the Executive Director of the National Aging in Place Council. I'm honored to say that everyone on this podcast today is a member of our group. We are a nonprofit trade organization that is mission driven on education and collaboration. So we bring together professionals like this with communities and caregivers and families, just to basically help make aging easier. So, and of course, I meet all these great people like you, Ryan. Have fun like this.
Absolutely. And my name is Ryan. I am the owner of Minute Women Home Care. If you listen to the podcast, you already know who I am, so I won't go into what that is. So we have limited amount of time, and I thought to try to give as much value to our listeners and viewers of this is to talk about some of the subjects that we talked about in the book, and a lot of those go around the pillars of aging that we believe in it with the NAIPC. But we'll go back and start with Courtney. Courtney, what were the specific, or one of the specific topics that you found most interesting that you were writing about? What was the one that resonated with you the most?
Oh, that's a hard question because I love it all. The whole industry fascinates me, and I love helping the others. One of the points that I had to make was in the housing section regarding people moving into communities. My background is I worked for a CCRC, which is Continuing Care Retirement Community. And within the CCRC, I was initially activities director for the nursing care floor, and then moved into director of marketing for assisted living and nursing care. So I understand the whole gamut of a continuing care retirement community. And there's always all kinds of questions you don't think about, including pets, adult children that may still need to live with you, those kinds of things I discuss in my section of housing, which I think is an important thing to think about. Not everybody realizes some places don't take pets, some take them according to certain size. Some allow adult children that have special needs come and move in. If they don't have special needs, they have special reasons why they will not accept an adult child. So all those things can be found in the book.
Absolutely. And it's important for people to know that within this book, there's a lot of information on the various options that you have, and that's why we wrote this. So it certainly encompasses a lot of different industries within senior care, so that you can make the best decision that makes sense for either you, your spouse, or adult the seniors in your life. If there was anything when you're talking about housing, Courtney, what would be one or two of the biggest kind of tips that you would give people in general when it comes to thinking about CCRCs or senior housing in general?
Well, definitely just be open to it. The communities that are being built now or been built in the last 10 years are incredible. They are not what if you are 75 now, not what your parent lived in if they did live in one 20 years ago. They've come around immensely. They're beautiful. They are active. The socialization's incredible. The food is significantly better. So don't hold your negative thoughts from what you've seen before against it. Keep an open mind, visit a few places. You don't have to move into it right away, but think about it, know about it, educate yourself. It's really important. And who knows, you may end up moving into it, and I know you'll love it. I love working in one, and the people that work there truly care. And so the atmosphere is just incredible. So that's my thoughts. I mean, certainly if you wish to stay in your home, I understand that. I understand both sides of the picture. So I know how to do both, convince you both ways.
Absolutely, and certainly everybody's needs are different, and there are certainly some opportunities for people that go to CCRCs and it's perfect, and for others it's not the right fit. So without a doubt, but thank you. But Vicki, on to you. What were your subjects in the book that you had to, not had to, but you were happy to write about after Tara held you down and forced you to become an author?
So I'm in the second pillar, which is health and well-being. And the focus of any writing or speaking I do is to try to give people an experience of what and why to work on their posture. So I will use imagery. For example, since postural alignment is so critical for our ability to function well, I use the expression lengthen, open. I find that using that image helps people move into a better postural position and to release some of the tension around the neck and shoulders. The breathing component, I will encourage people to do what we call conscious breathing, because breathing is automatic. So starting to become aware of your breathing pattern, being aware of breathing in through your nose, and then the use of slow, prolonged exhalations, why they are advantageous for reducing stress, which is a big thing nowadays. And for people who may have some type of lung condition like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, learning to focus on slow, prolonged exhalations is going to give them a better respiratory capacity, getting rid of stale air, making room for oxygenated air to come in. And then, so what you're hearing are my ABCs. And then the C is the centering. And I say, how often do we have falls or accidents or injuries or make some kind of mistake because our mind is one place, but our body is doing something else? So there's a technique that I put in the book that I acquired from a training I did, and it's called the the start, change, stop technique. So it's a good way to have you focus on one activity at a time, so you're less likely to get distracted and to have those accidents and injuries. And the other thing that is part of my contribution had to do with preventing falls, but a lot of the other authors deal with preventing falls from many different points of view. And for example, how you have your home arranged. But I also dealt with fear of falling. And I think my strategy is a little bit different than what you normally hear, because, you know, when a therapist is working with a patient or a nurse, you'll often hear them say, oh, don't be afraid, you know, I got you, or whatever. And I say, you know what? Your fear is real. I mean, if your balance is poor or you've had a fall, you have a reason to have fear. But the difference is you take charge of your body. Don't let the fear take charge. So you tell the fear, okay, I know you're there, but you don't have control. I do. And the last thing I'll say is that I encourage a lot of positive self-speak. So if somebody is afraid of falling, I encourage them to say, and make them suggest that they say it out loud, I am tall, strong, and confident. And it's remarkable. I could tell any number of stories of how that actually transforms how my former patients were able to function a little more confidently and competently.
So just to be clear, it isn't the same tactic of like being afraid of heights and just jumping out of the plane. You don't recommend people actually fall if they're worried about falling. That seems to be counterintuitive to what we're doing right now.
You're right, Ryan. However, you bring up a good point, and one of the things that many therapists do is actually teach somebody how to fall safely. And, we do a training starting, let's say, from a chair and lowering yourself down to the floor, how to get up again. And there are two abilities that are very key for us to be able to age safely and well. One is the ability to sit and stand from a chair, without being dependent on, hanging on, without plopping into the chair. So sit and stand skills. And the other skill, if somebody can do it, is to learn to actually get up from the floor. So there's a lot of research that is showing the importance and the value of developing those skills, if possible.
Absolutely big skills to have, and quite frankly, really important stuff, because all the care we provide people falls under two big. It's one or the other or both: memory issues or fall prevention. So I mean, it's a huge issue. Ronnie, while I was looking and listening, you were in a few different chapters, it looks like. What was the chapter that or the top that you enjoyed quite a bit, and what was that, and what can we learn from your insights?
Great. Yeah, I had two questions to answer, and I'd already, while you were talking, chosen the one I wanted to talk about, my favorite one. And that was in Pillar 5, Community and Social Interaction. The question was about a lonely widow who had lost not only her husband, but also some friends, and was looking for a way to deal with her bereavement. So I thought I'd talk about what my answers were based on. And sort of to net it out was, when I was looking, about a year and a half after my husband died, I thought to myself, I started to feel a little bit better. I wasn't necessarily crying every single day like I had been, but I still knew that, life wasn't, a bowl of cherries. And so I thought to myself, why was that? Why was I feeling better? And was that just like a momentary, blip of life, and I would feel bad again? Or was this going to sort of like increase, and and that I would just feel like well again, and not be crying every single day, which I did for about a year and a half, not for short periods of time. And so then I thought to myself, let's look at my life. And when I looked at my life, the image I saw was basically a three-legged stool. And when we think of a three-legged stool typically is balanced. I mean, a good one, not an old one, but a new one is balanced. You can sit on it, you're not going to fall. And then I thought, like, okay, so what do those three legs represent? And what, so maybe that would teach me why I felt better. And I looked at my life and I saw three communities making a part of my life, for which I realized I wasn't dependent on any one community. And those three communities, what I called my work community, meaning the people that I worked with, I interacted with, things like that, part of my daily life. Then I looked at it, the second, and these are in no particular order. Another community was what I called my faith community, that my husband and I had been what I call Friday night regulars. I'm Jewish. We went to services every Friday night. Okay. It was like a lifestyle. We went out to eat afterwards. It was fun. But now and I thought to myself, okay, so that the synagogue that we joined provided community, and there were a bunch of friends. So I knew I could always see my friends. And even to this day, when people say to me, are you still going to services, like every Friday night? And I say, yes, because it's my community and it's a way to get me out of this chair and out of a Zoom call. I'm not looking at the screen anymore. So there's lots of reasons here. And the third way I found to deal with, most importantly, that I don't think people think about too much, the third community when I looked at my life was what I called my volunteer community. And I had sometime after his death, I learned about a nonprofit called Assistance League. It's a national organization made up of chapters across the country and many major cities. And many of them own thrift stores. And I thought to myself, what fun. I could go volunteer there for a couple hours a week or a month or whatever, and just, work the cash registers, look at clothes, sort clothes. This could be just, and it's like a 3 or 4 hour shift, I think 3 hour shifts. And so I did that and was really active. And they wanted you also to be involved in what they called one of their philanthropic projects, meaning something that would also bring money into the organization, because what all of the funds go for is to support programs that help women and children. So one of the groups there was like the jewelry team, and I come from a jewelry family. My grandfather had a jewelry manufacturing plant in Rhode Island in the 50s. My father worked in jewelry for a good part of his life as a sales manager or a sales rep. And I thought, so we've always liked, jewelry. So I thought I'll join the jewelry team and I'll price jewelry. And I know the difference between costume and regular. And therefore, by figuring out, I chose, you had to choose a subcategory. So I chose pins. And then a couple of weeks later, they said, would I also price rings? I can see everybody smiling. Nobody knows the story. And so I knew how to test for gold, so because I was very concerned that some of the jewelry was being priced at not gold jewelry. And so I thought that, God, that's money going out the door. We have to really identify what the 14 karat gold is. So that's what I did. So that was what I call my volunteer community, was Assistance League. I mean, as my business has grown over the years, taken more time. I've sort of stepped back in the last year or so to not have the time to do that. But I loved it, and should I have a gap, I'd be happy to go back and do that. I'm still a member of the Atlanta chapter. So I guess it's a long story, but the way to deal with bereavement that I tell people is to build your own three-legged stool. It doesn't have to be those three legs. But I always felt like if one leg, for example, if work wasn't going well, I could focus on, the synagogue community, my friends in the synagogue, or my volunteer community, things like that.
Absolutely. It sounds like having some type of schedule and a reason to get up in the morning, and people that
Right.
are expecting to see you and more importantly, looking forward to seeing you, is very important to helping, get back on your feet after a devastating loss.
Right. To have some sense of structure, but not to, I see people sort of putting all their efforts into one what I call community, and I really think that for me seemed very risky, because what if things weren't going well for some reason? I wasn't getting out of it. I don't think I wasn't getting out of it what I want, feelings I wanted. So that's why I go back to the three-legged stool, because then there's other issues to create this sort of balance in our life when our life is out of balance.
If I can jump in, there's
Sure, everybody jump in, go for it.
Yeah.
That besides the communities that could be support us as we age,
Mhm.
but a sense of purpose.
Right.
That to me is a really big word.
Mhm.
Finding your purpose. I mean, when I would have patients that were depressed or something,
Mhm.
inevitably it affected how they participated in their therapy programs.
Mhm.
And you almost had to rewind and have the conversation about, well, let's find a purpose, even if it's just being able to, be available for your grandchildren. So I just wanted to throw that word in.
Yeah, good word. Good word. Good word. Thanks.
I mean, Courtney, let me bring you into this. When you have families in your CR, eventually you have couples, I imagine, and one of them passes. What is that? I mean, do you find that people, or do you gently nudge people into going to different activities and getting back into the community and getting back into kind of another structured, scheduled structured schedule. I don't know what you call it, but you know what I mean. Do you get people back on their feet and in with the masses and in with the group?
Yeah, it also depends on the personality. One of the beauties of working in somebody's home per se is that you really get to know who they are, what they enjoy, and how they handle bereavement and change. And usually you just take it along with them. When I was activities director, if that happened to a couple that lived in the area I was working in, I would go and visit the spouse that was still living and just sit with them. Sometimes they just wanted a quiet sit, or I would talk to them or read or play cards sometimes. And eventually a lot of them would slowly come out within a few weeks. And then I remember a few others that would just, bounce back within a week and just be out entertaining all of us and having fun and even talking about their late spouse in a fun and sometimes even humorous ways, like, oh, I can sleep again. The snoring has gone, that kind of thing. Like, it just depends on the personality. You just get to know them and figure out what's best for them.
Obviously, it can be a challenge, and I'm sure there's sometimes people that aren't open to that, and it takes more than a little nudge to get them back out into the community. Sometimes
Absolutely.
It's too easy to sit in front of your chair and watch the news all day.
Yeah, that is very, very true.
With that being said, let's go over to Tara real quick. And Tara, did you write? What did you write in this book? Was it? I don't think you wrote a lot, or did you?
I worked on the sections that explain what the pillars are, and then I wrote the transportation section by default. I think.
So we should have started with that. What are the pillars? That's a very good. That probably should have been the start of this, so everybody knew what we were talking about. We have pillars with the NAIPC. Tara, what are those pillars?
Yes, so we believe that to have a successful aging in place plan, you really have to identify and work on 5 pillars to create a strong foundation. That's housing, healthcare, finance, transportation, and social interaction. So really all of our members fall into one of those 5 pillars. I think we have probably all of them represented in some way on this podcast. So yes, that's what the 5 pillars are. I specifically wrote about the transportation section, which I'll be honest, I really didn't know a lot about it until I assigned myself this part. So I'm really glad that I did, because there's a lot more out there. I think in my mind, probably I defaulted to, shuttles, public transportation. I see the special senior buses that are out there, the special routes, but there are so many other options out there that are available. The shuttles, even just like if people are looking for transportation, the elder care locator through the area agency on aging. That's always so hard for me to say. They can find all sorts of transportation based on where you live, your region, your city, your location, what's free, what's provide fare assistance is provided, but also public transportation. When I was doing the research just here in Orange County, there's so many other options out there for older adults. They actually have specialized training for seniors. If they want 1-day, 2-day classes in person or virtual, they offer it in 7 different languages. And then at the end of the training, they give you a ride pass for 2 free days of rides. And then they also give you reduced fare if you ride the bus during non-rush hour times. So there's a lot of options out there. They have someone that will sit down and say, okay, on Monday you need to go to the doctor. Here's the route. This is what time you get up. This is what time you get off. Here's the proper way to exit and enter a bus, so you can get on and off safely. So there are a lot of options out there, and even ride sharing. I know a lot of people think ride share is Uber and Lyft, but there's volunteer services out there that offer ride sharing. We were just on a podcast earlier with these 3 ladies, and I was talking about a group that here in California, I can drive an older adult around and earn credits for someone else to drive my mom around in Atlanta, and that person driving my mom can earn credits for their mom in Minneapolis. So it's really interesting to see some of the new things that are popping up out of these rideshare programs. And then there's also, a lot of people are scared to use their phones for Uber or Lyft or for whatever reason, but there are these little concierge programs popping up like GoGo Grandparent, where They will make the phone call for you. You call them, they order the Lyft and Uber. They can actually, I believe, do background checks on the drivers and request the same driver for you over and over again if you'd like. So they also have, I think it's like $8 a month to start, but then they have a full service plan. Well, they'll take you to the doctor. They'll pick up your groceries and deliver it like Amazon does, or whatever, DoorDash or whatever it is in your area. So there's a lot of ways to remain active and mobile, even if you aren't able to travel anymore. So my section of the book really covers that, and also how to have a conversation when it's time. I say take away the keys. That's really an extreme way to say the topic, but I think the thing people really need to think about is start having those difficult conversations now, so that when it actually does happen, it's not because of a crisis. My grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. The way we found out is because she crashed her car in the ditch. And when the police and medical team called us, they said, were you aware that these were medical conditions? And we weren't. So don't let it get to that point. Be aware of dings and things on the car. If you notice irrational or erratic driving or things changing even, just, that's the time to start having the conversations and look for alternatives, because you don't want your loved one to be injured or injure someone else, because that's a horrible thing to have to live with because you didn't want to, call Uber. So that's what my section addresses in the book.
Now the next question I'm going to ask the group, starting with Courtney, is about why we wanted to be involved in this, and specifically NAIPC in doing this book. But before I kind of ask that question with the three other guests we have, I'll go back to you and because you spearheaded this book, you really kind of made this happen with you and Scott, and then the help of others, of course. But we do have a lot of professionals, senior care professionals that listen to this podcast. Some have reached out to me personally. Some have reached out to you, and they recognized you were on the podcast once, Tara, and they reached out to you on LinkedIn. What is involved, I guess, in summary, of putting a book like this together with a bunch of professionals around the country that have different viewpoints and different backgrounds, for those that might be interested in doing that for their organizations or their local groups that are tons of them around the country? What was that like?
Well, I learned a lot. I can say for myself, when you work on a project like this, it was very eye-opening, but it was just really great. We really took together, it was Gina Knight's idea initially. I'll give her credit from the Chicago. She's chair of the Chicagoland chapter. She's the one that initially approached us with this idea. So I'll give her credit for that. But when we work in this industry, even though, Ryan, you're in home care, and Ronnie's bereavement, and Vicky's PT, my husband here does PT, when you walk into someone's home, you're not just there for what you're there for. Like I said, those 5 pillars, they're all encompassing. So I might be going in for PT, and then I notice, they need food, or something needs to be modified in the home, or their power's out, or, just to be aware of everything that's out there, all the resources and all the questions. So we got together these 20 folks, and we took the top questions that were all asked, and we put them into the book form. So not only do we explain a little bit about what aging in place is, and that's Scott Bolton's role in it, and he really talks about kind of a best before date. If you start planning before that date, you have a vast number more options available to you than in a crisis situation. So, it was really just so great to have all this knowledge combined into one book that we can use really to promote our mission of education and just making aging easier.
Awesome. Thank you. Courtney, going back to you, what kind of drew you to this book? What, other than wanting to become a published author so that you can now go around and think you're better than everybody else, which I plan on doing as well.
We're international now. We're internationally published because we have sales from Canada.
We have sales from Canada, and I'll have my aunt and uncle in Portugal buy the book, and then we'll be European international. But what it takes time. You had to sit down, you had to think about these things. In some cases, you had to do a bit of research, and you had to get your thoughts together because you wanted to do a great job. What made you decide to want to be part of that and kind of jump into the author game?
Well, I did. I always want to be a novelist, but I didn't know that nonfiction would be my first published book. But it's yes, it is very cool, and I've already put author on my LinkedIn profile. As soon as it was hit, when Tara told us it was published, I put that up there right away. I am proud, and I'm proud to do this with the 19 other authors. It's a coup for sure. I love, like I said, I love the aging industry. I fell into it being a New Orleanian, fell into it because of Hurricane Katrina, needing a job. And it's a good story. One day I can tell everybody. But so I've loved it ever since. And it's a passion of mine, having gone through it with my father, having terminal cancer and passing away in the community that I worked in. And so I've had personal and professional background. And having all the resources in one place is so important to me. With my business, I'm helping people answer all of those questions, but only a little bit here and there. Some people need help with Medicare. Some people need help with fixing up their house, whatnot. Being able to say, hey, here's a book with everything you can think of, read it, you can pick it out. And also I love that it's for all ages, from 25-year-olds who have either older parents or grandparents that they're helping with, all the way through 95-year-olds if they have spouses that they need to help care for, or if they want to be prepared and not have to burden their adult children with all of the things such as bereavement. I mean, having all the paperwork, all the passwords, all that prepared and ready for them. I think it's such a great thing. It's been needed for years. And when Tara mentioned it, I probably flew out of my seat too quickly. I was very excited. So I'm very proud that I got to be a part of it.
I was going to say, right, what Nicholas Sparks, he's a huge writer right now. And didn't he get his foot in there? Didn't he get in an accident and he hurt himself and he was in a hospital bed and he had nothing to do, so he started writing? I thought that's how, so my point, I bringing it up is like, Courtney, that I guess all you got to do is get that first book out there. Now you've done it, and you've been part of. Now we expect less than 1 year from now, less than 1 year, that we're going to get a fully authored book from Courtney, since that's what she wants to do. And I don't know what, I thought that's what happened with Nicholas Sparks. I don't know. I thought he got injured and he was bedridden, and he wrote a book and it took off, and then he found his second career that made him $1 bajillion. So, but that's outstanding. And I will ask the same question to you, Vicky. What about the NAAPC that draws you in, and what was so important about being part of this project?
So, if I may, I'm going to start with a story about, well, when I was a physical therapist, I was about age 30, and I never wanted to work. I had no ambition to work with older adults. And a physical therapist friend of mine asked if I could fill in for her. She was going to be off a few days. Could I fill in at a local nursing home? And I really didn't want to. But she was a friend, and I agreed to do it. And unfortunately, it was a nursing home that had the smell of urine, and it just was, not appealing. And then I met one of the residents. I still remember him, tall, handsome man, but he couldn't speak. He could barely speak. And, working to have a conversation with him, turns out he had been an actor. And I get goosebumps telling the story, because that was like my aha moment, that behind every one of these older adults is a story, something really interesting. And that was the beginning of my transformation. Now I'm an older adult myself, so I can see things on both sides. As for why to participate, first of all, because Tara asked me. Secondly, because I'll use any opportunity to teach and train. It's been my passion probably from the time I could start speaking. And I was a little bit reluctant, because I've had my own book like brewing, and it's like, oh, now I got to take time from this book that I've time up.
You've got
I'm
one
not even,
year. You've got 1 year, just like Courtney, to get your book out too. That's why I was pointing to my watch.
oh,
One
okay.
year from today.
Right. So I actually sent an email to, the people that are going to be supporting me in doing that. But, this just became such an awesome opportunity and on so many levels. And I'm just so grateful on so many levels to Tara, to, all the other authors. And I'm grateful for the book. I mean, I didn't waste any time, getting it, and now I'm reading it. So.
Outstanding. And Ronnie, bringing back to that story that Vicky was talking about of when you go into a nursing home, we've all done it before, where it stinks in there, or it's run down, or you can just tell that it's not in the best shape in the world, and it's and it's one of those things that Vicky was younger and said, couldn't see herself, right, and couldn't see herself being older one day, that you might be in that scenario yourself. And that's one of the things that you taught your situation's about, because it's not about just getting older, but yours is about bereavement and about death. And that's something that we all don't if we don't want to talk about getting older, we certainly don't want to talk about dying or being widowed or a widower without your lifelong spouse. And so it must have been really important for you to get your message out. And is that kind of why you wanted to be part of this, and how you wanted to get people more informed about, hey, this can happen to people, and it happens far more often than you realize?
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. And I'm very grateful to Tara to ask me to be part of the book, because I do feel like that I have a story to tell, and that I'm willing to tell that story, and hopefully maybe it will be informative or eye-opening or something else, or resonate on some level for others. So that was why I really wanted to get involved. I had not written a book before, but I've contributed chapters or parts of chapters to books before. So it wasn't totally new. It was just kind of like, how is this formatted or whatever? Or am I going to be interviewed and you're going to transcribe my interview and put it in the book? That's happened to me. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And well, Tara, we can finish on this. How do people find this book? What's the name of this book? Is it a good book, or is it a bad book? Do you don't think people should read it, or should they read it? Should they buy it? Should they not buy it? What are your thoughts on this subject?
Well, I think everyone should buy this book. I think it was interesting that we were on a podcast earlier that I mentioned, and the gentleman said to Ronnie, if you have a successful marriage, it will end in death. And it's like, if you've had like, everybody's life is going to end in death, really. So we might as well start planning for it and make it as comfortable as possible, and your end of stage life as comfortable as possible, which is why you should buy this book, is to give you tips, because you really don't know what you don't know until someone tells you. So it's in Aging in Place Conversations, what the industry experts have to say. It's available on Amazon. It is live now. You can find out more information on our YouTube channel as well. We have a lot of information there. Each author has a little video about themselves, about what they did on there in the book on YouTube. So yeah, go to Amazon and check it out. We did, when it was released, we made number 64 in aging books right out of the gate. So I was really proud about that. So good job, everybody.
Absolutely. And I would say to put a cherry on that is that, as we talked about, these aren't always the most, happy-go-lucky thoughts to think about. It can be tough thinking about getting older, or thinking about your parents getting older, or your parents being gone. But this book was put out not to be some crazy money maker. None of us are getting rich off this book. This was a labor of love to try to give education, give information, and really encompass the mission of the NAIPC on giving back and trying to educate the public on your options when it comes to aging in place, whether that's at home, in a community like Courtney's, a CCRC or assisted living, whether it's in a nursing home, wherever somebody lays their head down and goes to sleep is home to us. So it's a way for you to relatively inexpensively, for $15 or $20, gain a lot of information from professionals that have been in this industry for decades that are trying to give you some wisdom, and you will definitely get more than one or two nuggets of information that you're going to be able to find useful in handling those sticky situations, whether it's with yourself or with close family loved ones when we're getting older. So it's definitely worth the investment of the money, and it would definitely be worthwhile picking that up. But with that being said, to my panel here, to my guests, thank you so very much for being part of the promotion of this and letting my listeners know about our book. And so proud to be authors with you all. And now we're going to be famous. We're going to be Instagram famous. We're going to be stopped in the streets. People will be taking our pictures. Get ready. The tsunami of fans and fanfare will be coming. With that being said, thank you all for listening at home, and we will catch you on the next one.